Dan, I'm sorry.
You know what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna snap a picture.
All right.
Smile, you hear that? All right, ready? I've always wanted to do that. All right, it's 10 o'clock, we're starting. And a hush all over the room. Happy Halloween.
Hey, trick or treat.
Trick or treat. Okay, close your eyes for a moment. Think about Halloween. What mental images do you have when it comes to Halloween? Open your eyes and let us know. What do you see when you think about Halloween? Witches, I heard that.
Ghost.
Candy, ghost. Caramel apples, that's a nice happy thought. What else? Trick or treat, what else? Pumpkins. What else?
Falling leaves.
Falling leaves. What about a black hat? Yeah? Scary movies. Who likes scary movies? Who does not like scary movies? Who has sometimes been forced to watch scary movies? All right. We've all been there. We've all been scared before. So we're going to talk about some spooky, scary, eerie things a little bit. And I want you to think about that cat for a moment. What do we know about cats? Cats are independent. Perfect. Cats are what else?
Smart.
Curious. And they're smart. So what we talk a lot about in Empowered Senior is staying curious. Stay out of judgment and stay curious, which I'm sure all of our panelists are going to agree. So I want you to think, today I'm a cat. Who likes cats? Okay, you're a cat. Who doesn't like cats? You're a cat today. Look at your neighbor and say, you are a cat. Look at your neighbor again and say, today and every day forward, you're a cat. Stay curious. Great. All right, in 2019 for October, we did scams. We had Mark Bennett and some phenomenal speakers. Mark Bennett's our district attorney, phenomenal speakers talking about senior scams and elder abuse. So we can hear more of that today. Last year, we talked more about current events. We're going to hear more about that today. So we want to cover both. So it's going to be another fire hose session. So get some paper to take notes. And if you think of questions, write them down so we can really quiz the panelists towards the end of the session and after. Most everyone is going to be able to stay after. You'll be able to visit with them. Okay, James or someone, would you like to come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure.
Thank you. Veterans, we thank you for your service. Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty liberty, and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We're going to get right into it today. Please thank our sponsors. We have additional sponsors today for the party. So please thank everyone, and thank you, Tanka, for letting us host this. We rent both sides of this room, and they provide free admission to the park. So we always say, enjoy the seasons with us at the Tanka, and come every month and bring your friends. Be sure to pass out those tickets. And again, thank the sponsors that are here today, and there's snacks and different things out there. I'm Katherine Ambrose. My husband Randy is somewhere. I'm sure he's he's carrying chairs. Randy, wave. He's in the back of the lecture. We're realtors. This started out as a seminar series to help people navigate questions as they're aging and downsizing, and it's turned into something much bigger. And we have a television show on PBS now called Empowering Seniors, where we cover lots of these topics. And I would like to welcome up Chief Attorney of Economic Crimes with the DA's office, Robert Short.
Thank you for having me. As Katherine said, I'm Robert Short with the
Feel
DA's
free to
office.
pull it out and talk right into it so they can
Okay.
hear.
I've been with the office about 17 years, and I currently run what's called our Economic Crimes Unit. And our office is broken into prosecution teams, and different senior DAs handle different areas in the office. So we have a gang team and a domestic violence and sex crimes team. My unit consists of, there's 5 attorneys, and we deal mostly with property crimes. So stolen cars, business break-ins, embezzlements. One of the areas that I've specialized in over the last couple of years.
Oh, right, if you could just put your lips right on that mic.
All right. Contractor fraud and elder abuse. And so today I want to talk a little bit about kind of the criminal side of what we consider a protected victim group. So we have, specialized laws for children, and we have specialized laws for our senior citizens. And that, sadly for me, at 55, I'm 5 years away from when I would be considered one of those protected victims at 60. And so I've only been given a small amount of time, so I'm going to go quickly, but I'm used to that. I've been in the office for a lot of years, tried a lot of cases, and so I'm used to judges saying, counsel, you got 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes. Tell me everything you want me to know, but when you're running out of time, you're done. So that's probably good to give a lawyer a timeline and a deadline because they like to talk. That's what we get paid to do. Kind of as a funny aside, Katherine exercise, say a holiday, ask everybody what you think. Well, if you want a very dim view of the world, ask a prosecutor. I was at a gathering of about 100 prosecutors. We were going through training, and part of that was to talk to us a little bit about our view of the world, right? Because we deal in human behavior and not the good kind, right? And so the speaker at this presentation of a room full of prosecutors puts a picture of an ice cream truck up on the monitor with a guy driving in a neighborhood. And he asks this room of prosecutors, what's the first word that comes to mind when you see that image? And you know what it was? Sex offender. Because we deal with a lot of bad behavior. But what I like to train on is you always have to bring kind of a skepticism to situations in life, right? What are the benefit? What is this person asking from me? And that's one of the best prevention protections we have to scams and financial ripoffs and contractor fraud and all those things is a healthy sense of skepticism to what is this person telling me? What does he want from me? And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. Where it gets complicated is when that person is in another person is inside kind of a closed circle of people that you can trust or that you have a relationship with, and they may be stealing from you or taking advantage of you. So we're going to talk a little bit, I call those internal versus external threats. We're going to talk about that a little bit.
Robert, they say they can't hear nothing, so you can just really talk in there.
Okay. Now am I getting amplified? So I do want to tell you personally that I always tell my kids, you know, one of you is going to have to take care of your mom and I someday, right? And there's the old saying, always be nicest to the child who's the most likely to take care of you. So, you know, we've got that scholarship fund completely paid up for the other child. He seems to be the most caring of the lot. But so 5 years ago, my mom got sick. And so I went through kind of that process with my brothers and I, and eventually lost her to cancer. Well, about the same time, my wife's mom got sick, and we kind of went through that process. And then we lost her dad, and it was all in a 5-year period. And it was a challenge to the family, and you know, your parents don't have warning stickers on them that say things like, hey, someday you're going to have to take care of it, right? Or you're going to have to talk to me about managing finances, or you know, all things in life. Suddenly, as a 50-year-old, I was dealing with those issues with my mom and my in-laws, but I got a lot of insight, right? And, you know, that has helped me be a better prosecutor on elder abuse cases, because I've kind of lived it as a family. And so when I sit down and I evaluate a case, those lessons I learned in going through those situations with my mom and my in-laws have made me a better prosecutor. We spend a lot of time in the office deciding what kind of cases we're not going to take, right? And we're going to talk about that, if I don't run out of time, a little bit as well. Families often have historical conflicts that kind of come to the surface when an older member of that family has either passed away or they start to get sick and they need help. And those kind of simmering conflicts in a family will come forward, and there'll be conflicts over money and property. And that is not the DA's office to sort out, okay? We decide where there's criminal conduct. And so a lot of times we spend more time deciding cases that are better handled in another court, or with some type of legal advice, or with mediation. It's not a criminal case. But we have plenty of criminal cases to keep us busy as well. So if I can go to my next slide, I'm going to try to go through this fairly quickly. All right, next slide. Maybe I can. There we go. So I found this little tidbit. I always thought this was kind of an interesting way to look at things. Where am I going to find criminal conduct in terms of economic crimes? I'm going to find it wherever there's something to steal, right? And so right now, currently, there's money. And I was reading a little bit. This really kind of started about 10 years ago. There's a massive amount of money and property out there right now that is kind of in a transition period between generations. And so that is where we're seeing a lot of pressure right now from the people who want to take that away from people who earned it, saved it, and set it aside for them and their kids and their kids' kids, right? So where are we going to find people trying to steal? We're going to find them wherever there's something to steal. These are just some statistics. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on them, but the last one is kind of interesting. We have seen hundreds of thousands of dollars go out of this community in the last couple of years based on these online telephone scams, door-to-door scams, and things like that. There's just a lot of pressure out there, kind of in that, you know, 55 and up demographic to get at money that's in accounts and retirement funds and that type of thing. So when I get a new case, or a case is presented to me, the DA has the charging authority, right? So we decide what is appropriate for charging. we have cases where maybe it's just a few $100s. And then the DA has to decide, do we bring the full weight of the DA's office on a $200 case? Or is there another way we can fix this? Can we get a refund or a reimbursement, separate some individuals, put in some protections and not necessarily have to litigate? But then we have the $100,000 cases, right? The financial planner who gets into his client's accounts and steals. Those are the ones that we bring charges on. We're going to talk about a couple quick case studies if I can get to, and some people that have gone to prison for kind of this elder abuse type crimes. So when I get a new case, one of the first things I decide is this is an internal versus an external threat, because I kind of approach it different ways. An internal threat would be somebody, let's say, we'll hear about a case where a lady is having a lot of medical issues. She's living in a facility. Her daughter is the durable power of attorney. The daughter takes advantage of that access to accounts and funds and spends it on herself, on her kids, on travel, on restaurants. And while the mom is in a nursing home, getting no access to those funds, getting no benefit from the spending of those funds, right? That's what I would call an internal threat. It's your financial planner, your lawyer, your family member, your friend, the person you put in a position of trust is now stealing from you. The other kind of case that I would review would be an external threat, and that's where somebody is coming in from kind of outside your closed circle of people and attempting to take advantage of you from there. That would be door-to-door sales, the phone call, your grandson is in a jail in Mexico type stuff, and some of them are like Microsoft or a tax issue, or you have an issue with the sheriff's department. These are what I call external threats. That's where they're coming in. We see a lot with these type of individuals where they send thousands of inquiries out looking for one little nibble out there. Then they focus on a target, they develop that target, and then they take money from them. Just as an example of that, you know, sometimes as we get older, we become more isolated. Maybe we lose a spouse and we don't have, and family's kind of gone on and they're raising kids and they're working and they leave the community and you become more isolated, and sometimes you become lonely, and that individual sometimes is at a high risk for being scammed by one of these external kind of threats coming in. Again, those are internal threats. These are just some examples. A son getting into an account, taking $70,000 while the parent is in a nursing home. A daughter as a durable power of attorney begins paying her own bills with her mom's money. A trusted family friend gets into some trust accounts on some kids to do his own wheeling and dealing on some real estate deals. These were unauthorized transactions. Rerouting Social Security checks for personal use. And then even healthcare workers occasionally, we've been seeing a little bit of a trend, and we've been working with the Attorney General. We've been seeing, because a lot of people are using home healthcare now, my wife's a home healthcare social worker, we're seeing a lot of strangers coming into people's homes. We're starting to see property and debit cards and financial statements disappear. And so we've been working with the Attorney General to hit some of these in-home caregivers who are stealing, hit them a little harder in prosecutions. So financial abuse, kind of with this target demographic, is probably 90% of what we see. 10% of it is physical abuse, and it's not necessarily intentional infliction. A lot of it is neglectful care. And the way the statute is written, financial abuse versus physical abuse, on the physical side, it is abusive to a person, not only to inflict, you know, let's say strike them or mistreat them or verbal abuse, it's also considered under the law abusive to withhold necessary treatment, right? So if you're diabetic, you need insulin, or if you haven't had you haven't been moved in your bed, you're getting bed sores, that's neglectful treatment. That's covered under the statute as well. Today, I'm mostly talking about financial because it's kind of our bread and butter. in terms of the number of cases we file, but the physical stuff is out there. I've got a great partner in the Attorney General's office who specializes in this, and he's got a couple, they're treated as homicides. When you provide neglectful care to the point somebody passes away prematurely, it's treated as a homicide in Kansas. And he's got open homicides in a couple counties in Kansas. Fortunately, I've got homicides in my case, but they are not what we would call mistreatment homicide, which is fortunate. Okay, so where it gets complicated, this is kind of coming back to what I talked about, is deciding what do we sort out and what do we not get involved in terms of prosecutors. One of the issues we sometimes find is a family will come to us and they've identified one particular family member that was in charge of the money for maybe some aging parents, and the money is gone, and now one of those parents has passed away and the family is squabbling over what's left. And then allegations start getting thrown around that, well, Uncle Bill was supposed to be paying mom's bills and the money's gone and we think he should be prosecuted. That is not what DAs are paid to do, okay? We do not sort out family disputes. Another scenario sometimes we find is that we see these kind of sweetheart situations where, and I don't mean to make it sound like a stereotype, but occasionally we'll see an older widowed male will get into a new relationship and the family freaks out, right? And they're wondering how much money is he spending on it, and she's scamming him and things like that. You know, if I was that person, I've got full capacity to make decisions. I'm by myself, I'm lonely, and I enter into a new relationship. I guess my attitude toward my family would be to mind your own business. We do hear that quite a bit. Now, again, that is not what my boss pays me to prosecute. And that is a family situation that needs to be sorted out. So that 20-year-old conduct, people making decisions in their lives with full capacity, family disputes, that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is, I want to talk a little bit about the statute. One of the trends we're seeing right now in law enforcement is to pay more attention to protected classes of victims, and that includes 60 and older citizens. So they passed a statute. It talks, these are some of the elements. We've set the cutoff at 60, which seems kind of young for me all of a sudden. We also lump in there as well what we call dependent adults, and that's also a protected class, almost like a child. And this is someone who relies on others because of maybe a developmental disability, but they're kind of treated in that same protected class of victims as elder persons. As I stated, mistreatment, it can be financial or physical, but really the vast majority are financial. And then we have this fancy term called fiduciaries. And what a fiduciary is, it's just really kind of a legal term that describes anybody in your life that's in a special position of trust, right? So I am a fiduciary to my children until they become adults. If your daughter is your durable power of attorney, they're in a fiduciary with you. That's that special relationship of trust. You can create a fiduciary relationship very formally, like in a court document, like you're my trustee or you're my DPOA. But a fiduciary relationship can also be just created by the facts. Like if a neighbor gets really involved with their elderly neighbor, right? And begins to care for them, and they begin to rely, that elderly resident begins to rely on that neighbor for a lot of their needs, and maybe gives them access to some of their resources. They drive them, they pick up their groceries, things like that. That can be a fiduciary relationship. That's a special relationship of trust. And what the statute talks about is there's special punishment for fiduciary abuse. Why? Because it's not like I just stole your car out of your driveway one night and never met you before. I have a special relationship of trust with you, and I still take advantage of you. The law recognizes that as a more serious offense. So this is getting in the weeds a little bit. I'm not going to spend much time on it, but the statute talks about the different ways you can mistreat an elder person. And we use words like undue influence, coercion, harassment, duress. We're going to talk about just a couple quick case studies to kind of see these words in action and what the actual conduct is that kind of fits into that description. All right, I won't go there again. I've done closing on murder cases and haven't had this many problems. All right, so we talked a little bit about fiduciary abuse, and in the law in Kansas, there's actually rules. If you have entered into this fiduciary relationship with somebody, there's rules. And you know what's interesting in law is you can decline that role, right? If let's say a parent would come to you and say, "Hey, will you be my durable power of attorney?" I tell people all the time, don't answer right away. You need to think about it. Because if let's say I'm the son and my mom says to me, "Hey, will you be my durable power of attorney, not only for my medical treatment, but for my finances? I want to put you on all my accounts, and I want you to pay my bills and keep an eye on me and take care of me. If I lose capacity, if I have a stroke, I want you there for me." And you know, our human nature, our reaction would be, "I absolutely will do that." But here's the deal, that is a huge responsibility because you take on some liability legally when you become a fiduciary for somebody. So my brother and I were my mom's trustees. She had a little farmland, she had some accounts and some retirement. And when she passed away, I had a conversation with him. I'm like, "Hey, there's rules in Kansas." And we talked a little bit about the requirements that we would have to do that.
I apologize. I need to interrupt for just a
Okay.
moment. Can I use the mic?
Absolutely.
Just a second. Hi, guys. My name is Sheree Fleetwood. We had something special set up. Nobody knew about, not even Katherine or Randy. And this was between me and there's another person in the audience. Her name is Mary. We wanted to bring the mayor in and give recognition to Katherine and Randy for every time they do this seminar for everybody, all the information. And we want to recognize them. So here's the mayor.
She was at back from the beginning. I didn't realize Katherine wasn't aware that we were going to give her this award, but I'm so glad that it is a surprise and it looks like it's a surprise. So thank you to Mary, by the way. Mary is the one who nominated Katherine. I'm just going to read this. Hereby know that the city of Wichita, in recognition and appreciation of Katherine Ambrose, issues this certificate of recognition for her outstanding service, excellent leadership, and dedication to provide resources to senior citizens and for her continued volunteerism and countless other acts to better our community. So I wanted to Katherine. These series are great. We've got nothing but positive feedback. We really appreciate the volunteerism that you do to help our community. As a small token of our appreciation, please accept this award. And again, I apologize, I have to go to a press conference in 10 minutes, so I had to sneak out back and interrupt. This is a commercial, so I'm going to hand it back over to the DA's office. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And I do appreciate these opportunities to come out because these opportunities to kind of prevent future cases from being presented to the DA's office, there's no way to quantify it, right? We can't keep statistics on cases not filed, but this is kind of part of the job in our office is to get out and talk about these things to hopefully kind of head off a case before it lands on our desk. So I just want to pick up right where I was on fiduciaries. So if you are wanting to pick a child to be a durable power of attorney, or you already have established that relationship, or you are that durable power of attorney for another person, there are rules that that require certain conduct. I always tell people, if you want to be your parent's durable power of attorney, you almost have to step out of your role as the child, as the son or the daughter, because now you're a fiduciary, and there's certain things that you can't do as a fiduciary that you could as the child, right? And you can't give yourself gifts. You can't, you can't use those resources for yourself. You have to stand basically in that person's shoes. You have to keep an accounting. You can't commingle funds. And so I tell people, you kind of have to stop being the son or daughter if you want to be the fiduciary. If you want that role, then take it. Another thing I counsel people on is when you pick a fiduciary, pick very carefully, take some time, and don't worry about hurting people's feelings. One of the most common scenarios we see is that a family will kind of mature and the kids will grow up and they'll start their own families and maybe pursue careers and leave the community. But occasionally in a family, you'll have one person who kind of stays close to home. And I mean really close to home, as in the basement. The last child that's stuck in the basement at 30 or 40 years old is not a good choice for your DPOA. No. The choice for your DPOA is the high functioning child that makes decisions who's already busy and you don't want to bother with it. Well, my advice is bothering with it. Because we do occasionally see that the DPOA in a family gets assigned by default to the last person who's still hanging around the family home. And often they're the least qualified and they're poor decision makers at times. And in worst case scenarios, it's that child who has lifelong struggles with some issues that are not necessarily their fault. Sometimes there's addiction issues, mental health issues, employment issues, financial, criminal justice issues. They've got a lot to deal with. Don't give them the added responsibility, because what happens is it puts them in a position to make a poor decision down the line. Special issues and elder abuse cases. I've tried these to juries. Sometimes in my cases, I've had my victims, they pass away before I get to trial. And so I have to kind of go back and recreate conversations, and through nursing home records, medical records, we interview family members. We have to recreate kind of the state of mind of that person at a different time, because I don't have them available for court, right? You would think, yeah, well, you must be used to that. In a homicide, you never have the victim to testify, right? Well, yes. But in these elder abuse cases, probably next to homicide cases, I have the most cases where I don't have a victim I can bring to court. And sometimes it's not because they've passed away, sometimes it's a capacity issue. And I saw this a little bit with my mom and my father-in-law. There were times of the day they had fantastic capacity. They were sharp, you could interact, you could have a conversation, but there were times of day where my father-in-law, he couldn't remember what he had for breakfast. And so capacity is a tough thing when you prosecute these cases, because sometimes capacity isn't a linear thing. It's kind of like, it kind of goes like this. Some days are better than other days. Some times of day are better than others. And sometimes that has to do with the timing of medications. So there may be just a certain window of time in a day where I have a victim who has the capacity to talk to me and talk about what's going on with their finances and their family and their fiduciary. So that's just something that's kind of different than my other cases. And we have ways, I guess the assumption would be, sometimes I see this with defense counsel, is, well, your victim died, you don't have a case. Not true in Kansas. Kansas law does not reward a defendant by the death of their victim, right? So there are ways to get statements back into court. It's just not as compelling when you have a live person to talk about that. But when you specialize in these cases, you figure out ways to kind of recreate somebody's life. And that's important to you, because if you have somebody in your life that you care about, that you're keeping an eye on, that you're trying to help, and you think that they've been victimized by somebody else, take note of those conversations. Take note of the actions you saw and the access that maybe that suspect had with the victim, right? Because it may come a point where that's the only way we can recreate the evidence in that crime and get those statements in, is I've called nurses from nursing homes and caregivers, family members, brothers, sisters, sons and daughters. They all become witnesses for that victim, and that cannot produce that victim in court. Special issues, again, when the guardians and conservators, trustees, executors of wills, durable powers of attorneys, those are all formal fiduciary relationships. They have rules. And so those are just some examples of those fiduciary. That's one of the first things I look at in the case is the person we suspect of stealing, worthy of fiduciary, because I got enhancements in the law for those type of individuals. Family cases, I did a little bit of prosecution of domestic violence. It's always complicated. Why? Because it's a crime that occurs in a household. Everybody has these pre-existing relationships. It creates bias. There's a history between everybody. A lot of my elder abuse financial cases are within families. That's the most common scenario. And sometimes I have to sort through a lot of relationships. You know, I tell my kids all the time, just because we're related doesn't mean I like you, right? And so probably all of you have experiences within your own families where there's just people who don't get along, right? And so sometimes we have to kind of wade through that as we sort out a good case. And here, this last point is just cases rely on, sometimes I just have to recreate a case because I don't have a live witness to produce. All right. This is Jeff. I'm going to go through about 5 scenarios. These are actual cases. All of these people were convicted and they all went to prison. So I'm not, hopefully, if you know Jeff, he did his time. He paid his debt to society. Jeff was a contractor. Jeff was kind of flew under the radar of the major remodelers in town. He would bid jobs cheaper than like a well-known like remodeler in town that advertises and has, you know, nice trucks and a facility. Jeff was a small-time contractor, and you know, for a lot of years he did fine. And as he got into more financial stresses, he began to push the type of job he was taking more, and he got in over his head. And a lot of times he would target people who really, really needed an improvement on a home but couldn't afford the higher end remodel, right? He'd bid in cheap, he'd take all their money, and then he wouldn't show up to complete the work. And so we went after Jeff on multiple cases. It was a good outcome in some ways because we ended up convicting him. We tried him on one case, he pled the rest of them. We got about $40,000 back from him. And what's interesting about Jeff is when he went to jail, his wife, to help him out, cashed out a portion of her retirement to pay back his victims, right? So I figured that Jeff got punished in kind of a way that I had no control over. Because even though we convicted him of a felony and sent him to prison, he also blew $40,000 of his wife's retirement money, and I'm sure he's still paying for that today. Yeah. Jeff will get out of prison this fall. So this is Lori. Lori had a drug problem. Her and her boyfriend were doing door-to-door sales of lawn services. Lori and her boyfriend stumbled across a retired professor at Devious.
Let's see. So let's do that. So let's go to the frequency preset. Let's try 2.1 again.
All right, I think I'm back. That's not part of the specification. So Lori befriended this elderly gentleman. He was a widower. He was lonely.
There it is.
And I think he had a genuine fondness for Lori. Lori began spending a lot of time with him. She jettisoned the boyfriend, began to focus on this individual. She took money for lawn care that was never performed. She told him a lot of stories about being in a car accident and expecting a big settlement. She told him she was going back to nursing school. She laid quite a foundation and ultimately took about $17,000 from this elderly gentleman before his daughter figured out what was going on. And the clue for her was she went over to visit her dad one day and he had a brand new iPhone. And she's like, Dad, where'd you get that new phone? And that started a conversation about his contact with Lori and a number of loans that he had made to her. And so Lori was initially convicted by a jury trial and granted probation, but she could not stop using, and the judge had kind of had it with her for continuing to use and not make her payments on restitution, and she went to prison. She's out now. This is Walter, and Walter, we had a little bit of a run in the office of like professional individuals that were committing these financial crimes. Walter was a financial advisor. He was a longtime friend of a business guy here in town. The business guy was married, the business guy died, and Walter was the financial advisor. And the widow basically said to Walter, hey, just take care of everything. And if I need money, I'll call you. And in the meantime, Walter developed a gambling habit and he blasted through hundreds of thousands of dollars. By the time the widow began to suspect something was up because she wasn't getting her regular reports on her accounts. By the time she walked into the bank and said, what's in my account? The accounts were at zero. And judge sent him to prison. He's currently in. He's written a number of petitions to the Department of Corrections because of, he says that got medical issues and he wants out of custody, but there's no recovery. He had no insurance. He left that widow with basically very little retirement remaining. And so it was an appropriate outcome on that case. This is Shelby, and I'll talk about Shelby in a minute. In my experiences in dealing in these elder abuse cases, the two things that really are on the minds of people as they get, and for me too, as you approach 60 and 65 and older, there's two things: my health, my money. Because you're worried about your health, what are my good years, how much time I have after I retire, blah, blah, blah. I had this conversation with my wife. Are we going to be able to get to the end of our working years and have some time for each other, right? And you want to be healthy during that time period. And so your money and your health. And what happens is a lot of times as their health issues become more prominent in a person's life, that's when people will come in and take advantage of the finances. And so that's kind of what Shelby did. So her mom is in the nursing. Her mom is really struggling with a kind of a cascade of medical issues. And she has capacity sometimes during the day and sometimes she doesn't. Shelby is raising teenage children. She's got expenses. She begins to get into her mom's accounts because her mom is not paying attention. Her mom had spent her working years in finance and accounting. Her mom was very good about the money she kept and the money she saved. But when her health issues became overwhelming, Shelby was able to come in and steal from her. That was about a $70,000 loss. My victim died before I got to trial. The jury convicted her as well. The judge sent her to prison. That was just an unfortunate case, but that's a common scenario. It's within a family. It's usually the DPOA, and usually the person who's being stolen from has other things going on, so they cannot watch their finances. And then finally, Ricky. This is my last case study. Ricky's another pretty example. We kind of merge elder abuse and contractor fraud. Ricky, you may have seen his trucks. It was Ricky's Tree Service. He had this big four-wheel drive truck with one of those panel stickers on the side. And from my office, when I had court with Ricky, I could see that truck parked in front of the courthouse. It just made me so mad to see that truck out there. Because Ricky's deal was this: he was a tree trimmer and he paid his bills. But what he found was he went around and he was a door-to-door guy. Hey, your tree's dead, I'll cut it down. He was just basically a contractor with a pickup and a bucket of tools. And what he did is, even though he was trimming trees, he began to expand his work with certain customers to like build a shed, or repair a fence, or pour a little concrete. And Ricky was able to worm his way into people's lives, often elderly, single people living here in the city, and get all these jobs and take money up front, take money. Then he would not show up and he would reschedule his projects. And I chased Ricky around for about 2 years before we finally locked him down on multiple felony convictions for taking money. We had him on payments and he stopped making payments. He was testing dirty. And I remember the last day he came in court, he actually had his little climbing gear on and his harness, his little reflective vest. And Judge Ben Burgess, who's retired now, that was the day the judge had enough. And those are my favorite days, right? Because prosecutors, we always did enough for people, but it's up to the judge to pull the trigger. And finally, Ricky went and did his time on all those cases. We got a little bit of money out of him. I still talk to Gwendolyn on the phone. She's a sweet old lady, lives on the west side, not very far from where I live. And, you know, sometimes as a prosecutor, you deal with a lot of people and you just kind of have a connection with them. And that was Gwendolyn. You know, Gwendolyn was a single lady, still taking care of an adult disabled child, trying to maintain a house and not living on a lot of income. And the thing is, it gets harder and harder to maintain the property. So she had issues with her house and her fence and her driveway. And Ricky was right there. He was kind of a very charismatic, outgoing individual, and he took advantage. And so that was kind of a classic contractor fraud case. Unfortunately, we didn't get much money out of Ricky before he went to prison. So that kind of felt a little rushed today. I wanted to cover as much material as possible. I think I'm out of time. And so I appreciate the time to come out. The DA's office is always available for consumer issues, contractor issues. We meet with families all the time to talk about scenarios where there's missing money or the possibility of mistreatment of an elder person. We're available. You can Google us and find different contact information. In fact, my number's in there as well. So I appreciate the chance to come out. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We could talk about your topic probably for 8 hours. So, all right, we're gonna smile for Delno there. Thank you, Delno. Thank you so much.
Oh, and also there are some like DA giving stuff like pens and some different stuff. Grab as much as you want. It's on the table on your way out.
Thank you.
I'm going to be hitting him up soon, very soon, to be on our television show to talk about senior scams and elder abuse. So I'll be calling. All right. All right, we're gonna go. So I want to remind you, you are a cat, and you are very curious, and you're gonna stay out of trouble. You're gonna stay out of judgment. What does that mean to stay out of judgment? That's like when you think somebody's so wrong, it just makes you so darn mad that you don't listen to them. And a couple of y'all be thinking about jumping out of your seats and leaving and not staying for an awesome party. So I'm gonna double dog dare you to remember that you are a cat and you're going to be a cat. Because we can talk about senior scams and elder abuse on and on, just like we offer in this industry every single year. But I think we have something more spooky and more eerie and scarier to talk about. So we don't want you to be taken advantage of by senior scams or elder abuse. We also want to educate you on some other things that you might not be aware of. So we're going to start with Pastor Wade Cash. I think it's a good time maybe since this is my program, I can throw out mine. Might be a good time to come back to God if you're not there. So we've got Pastor Wayne Cash, and he's going to talk to us about fear, and then we're going to bring the rest of the panel up, and we're going to talk about some of the scary things that some of us are thinking about today's world. How many times is fear mentioned in the Bible, Pastor?
I have not done that word study.
I think it's like 365 times.
A bunch. Oh, do not fear is 365.
Okay, good.
Do not fear.
Good. All right, very good. So every speaker starting now is going to speak loudly into the microphone. All right, take it away.
Thank you for letting me
You're
be here
on the
today.
clock.
I'm on the clock, and as the lawyer said, you know, they like to talk. I'm a pastor. Are you kidding me? Come on now. But I want to go through this just really quickly, just to lay the foundation, so when we actually do the questionnaire thing, the foundation's laid. Because ultimately, you guys are living in a really cool world. We really are. Did you know that? The question is, how do we look at it? And there is a rule, we call it Rule 365. There's 365 times in God's word it says, do not fear. That still applies today, by the way. So the question is, because we're living in this crazy world, who are you going to listen to? That's the question every single one of us has to ask every single day. And I'm going to go through some of this really quick. Here we go. Challenges right now going on in the world today. Global supply challenges, global food supply challenges, global weather challenges, global energy challenges. Whoops, back up. Global health challenges. All those are things that are going on in our world today that we get to be a part of. And by the way, I'm in the protected class too now. I didn't realize I was in the protected class. Like, wow, hey, I feel special. Anyway, here's some things most of you all have seen. World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Cold, Middle East War, Southern Border War. Well, that's a lot of border. Oh, yep, sorry. Good catch, thank you. How about the 1943 synthetic rubber tires? You think about that. You guys, we drive on those things. The changes, how about 1964 basic? Who knows what that is? First computer language. How about first PC 81? How about WWW? What is it? World Wide Web. It's a modern day Tower of Babel, if you understand it. How about this one? Smartphone. Did you know the smartphone you carry has more technology in it than the computers that launched the first man into space? And you guys are using them. Pretty cool. How about this one? There we go. How about the 2009 pandemic? You guys remember it? I was in senior living during that time. It was called the H1N1. It actually went throughout the world. And we actually had some large number of losses. But you know what? We listened differently back then. We didn't shut the world down, but it was a pandemic. So the question is, how do we respond? Because we are a global community today. We have society advances. This is the challenge. So society advances morality today because we're a global world. Science dictates truth. Therefore, there's no absolutes anymore. And therefore, we have a global loss of inner security. Because that's where it comes into us. Every single one of you guys have heard senior scam talk, right? Who has not heard what the top 10 are? All right, so I'm not going to cover most of those. Here we go. But the attack is on. Here's reality. They place doubt. See, here's reality. Every scam in the world starts with doubt. Your financial rest, your health rest, your emotional rest, and your spiritual rest. They attack these areas. And the question is, how do they attack them? It's fear. Fear from the Greek word actually says it's an unusual emotion of severe distress that causes you to want to flee or take some action, basically. It demands a response from you. And because, especially you men, you're going to respond because we've been trained to respond our whole life. Trained to be in control. And here's the 7 basic emotions. You got anger, fear, disgust, happiness, sadness, surprise, and contempt. Do you notice happiness is in the middle of 6 other negative ones? Happiness. It's usually connected to relationships in our lives. That's where happiness really comes from, and which is really based on hope. But fear rules, from my experience, fear is the #1 emotion. I've served in senior living for 15 years, most of it bivocational as an assistant pastor. The last 5 years, I've been senior pastor at Calvary Chapel Fellowship. And even in the church, still the #1 problem, fear. Wow. Okay, I have no idea. Okay,
If anybody can help back there, that would be great.
yeah. That's going to take a minute. Okay. So anyway, bottom line is, what does fear look like? That's what we're going to get to, and how do we respond to it? Okay. keep my finger on that one button. All right. The most power, I believe at this point, it's really probably the most powerful human emotion. And from my experience, the other 5 may resonate from fear. And believe it or not, science, there is true science still out there today. And one of the things science has discovered is we live in a fear-dominant mentality. Our design, human design, has a fear dominance in it. We have to choose not to operate that direction. So how do we do that? Fear. It breaks down hope. By the way, there are only 2 sides to this world. There's the right side and the left side. That is it. There is no in between. We need to understand that. And what this does, fear breaks down hope. So the hope's on the right, fear is on the left. When we operate in fear, it tears down the hope. And it tears down love then, that relational stuff, it tears down and demolishes our inner strength. And what hope does though, which is the key, which is on the right, it's always looking that there's something better. And it's not just the thinking I feel, it's a knowing. It will get better. I know because I'm pouring something into this, something's going to get better. And then also, hope is that it's not all this is. There's more to it than what we have right here today. But here's the key. Hope. Psychologist once said, okay, this is science. If I could find a package and dispense hope, I would have a pill more powerful than any antidepressant on the market. Think about that. Hope is more important. By the way, does anybody know what's killed more people in this world in the last year and a half? Lack of hope. And that's called suicide. Number 1 killer in the last year and a half, worldwide, lack of hope. So what is hope? It's the belief that things will get better. It's not wishing. It's not trying. It's not I think. It's knowing and operating on that knowledge. Because it's different it's a determined inner spirit of resolve. I'm going to make it happen the way it's supposed to happen. But here's the 2 types of people in the world that we're getting close to. We have psychological victims and we have psychological survivors. Again, basic science and psychology. But it focuses on 3 things. 1 is faith. You either have faith in something or you don't have faith in something. But you still have faith. It's just a negative faith. You have thankfulness or you don't have thankfulness. Thankfulness, what's going on? By the way, how many of you all, real quick, have at least one comorbidity in your life? One comorbidity. In other words, one medical diagnosis. Woo! Now my question is, are you thankful?
Yes.
It changes the way we deal with it. Okay? And the last one is love. Love is really important, okay? This is not that touchy-feely stuff. This is that agape stuff, that Greek word that says, I'm going to invest in something, even though it's going to cost me, without looking for a return. That's being a psychological survivor. But the power of fear is what's important here. It's been used to manipulate others. Power of fear is used to manipulate others. This is the bottom line of every scam out there today. Okay? And what it does, they develop, when I say they, by the way, there are people out there, they are real. They develop their thinking into a state of ignorance.
Amen.
And you need to understand that this is true. And it happens to you, it can happen to me. I've been tried to be scammed before. And it does, especially the computer one, messing with my head. You know, you're working really hard, all of a sudden pops up, Microsoft says this, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. That fear just comes up really quick. You have to recognize it. And because we get to this thinking of state of ignorance, what happens next? They take away our sense of responsibility. We become the victim. Okay? And when we become the victim, we are willing to redefine our socially acceptable behavior. If you don't think this is going on today, you need to pay attention because it is. And ultimately, they will have you trade your security for your rights.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, that's what scams are all about. And yes, they want your money, they want your resources, all that kind of stuff, but they want more than that. They want
your freedom.
Exactly. They want your mental well-being. They want it all. And they will continue to take and take and take until you say enough. And scams, again, they attack your imagination. Because here's how it works. They attack your imagination. Every single one of us have imagination about what the world's supposed to look like, how we're supposed to be, but those things attack that. And what do they attack? Most of the time, our well-being, what we think life's supposed to look like, how we're supposed to feel. And when they attack that, they attack with fear, based on the foundation laid in that imagination as they come at you. Tell you, oh, this is not safe. Oh, that's not good for you. Or this. Not with facts, but with ignorance. Does anybody know what the chief propaganda expert in Germany said about a lie? Till it's so big that people have to believe it. And often enough, repeat, repeat, repeat. So then they attack your decision process, okay? Because now your imagination's all whacked out. You're walking in fear now. It's like, what decision do I make? Now, most guys, I've taught the actual scam thing for years in senior living, okay? Most guys like to make a decision. Well, I'm gonna do that because I'll fix this, I'll solve this. But usually we make the wrong decision because our mind is in the part of ignorance now. We're not following what we're supposed to be doing. So they attack our decision process. And when you make an emotional decision, you're making a wrong decision usually. Then they attack your memories, okay? What do they attack? Your family, your loved ones, the memories of what's going on in your life. They attack those because you're already vulnerable from the decision process, because they've already attacked the fear, because they're attacking who you are in your imagination. And ultimately, they get you to act out their outcomes. That's fear. That's what's going on today. That's what's going on in your life. I had a gentleman when I walked in today, he goes, hey, you want to share my letters? I'd love to. He's got a letter. Guess what? He's won $10,000. And if you do this really quick and do it our way, because if you don't, you're going to lose it. See, that's fear. Sounds good, but it's fear. And that's what we need to focus on and understand. All scams start with fear. And that's when we start.
Pastor, thank you. You know, I just chair. Jim Price, you think an attorney and a pastor like to talk? We got a radio guy here. Come on up, Jim. How hard was it to sit there and be quiet for that whole thing? You look red. Take a few deep breaths. Then we have an insurance lady. I think she likes to talk. Cherie, come on up. Yeah. Politician. Where's the politician? It's a good thing that DA guy got out of here. Kathleen Garrison, are you still here? Oh, okay. I thought maybe she fainted away, not getting up here to talk. All right. So if you know me, or if you follow me, you know what I think about a lot of things. And you know I read this book, COVID-19, The Great Reset. It's a delightful book. It's written by Klaus Schwab, Prince of the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. I think that's where a lot of this fear is coming. And I would highly encourage you to read this book and read it from a perspective of, are they trying to make us scared? And why are they doing it? So I did not want to give this man my money, but I don't think it really matters because these people own everything in the entire world. And so they don't need our money. And so I think there's a lot of fear. Well, I know there's a lot of fear and it's driven by money and power. What if you have all the money in the world? What do you want? You already have all the money. What do you want? Maybe you want to fly rocket ships. All right, maybe you want to control every human being on the planet. Maybe you want to shut down our state mines someday. As a realtor, I worry about home ownership rights. Maybe you don't want regular people to own a house or a car. And maybe you would be so daring that you would say, you will own nothing and you'll be happy.
That's right.
We are here without masks, most of us. But your children and your grandchildren are wearing a mask in the government schools. Yes? 5-year-olds are wearing masks today. Well, grown-ups go to ball games and parties, right? Now, if you're gonna think about how to scare people more than anything, what would you attack? Health. This is like the perfect plan, a virus to scare us all to death. And it's a real virus. I've had it. It's a real thing. We need to talk about some stuff. All right. So Pastor Wayne Cash does a weekly intel briefing. So he knows all kinds of really amazing things, and it's on YouTube if you want to learn more, if you want to talk more to him or attend his church. Jim Price has been doing a radio show nonstop through this whole thing. So Jim, let's have a word from you.
Well, thank you guys for being here, being a part of this great group of people, because you guys have actually went against everything you were trained to do for the last year and a half, which is to live in fear.
Because you're empowered.
Right? You guys are completely different than everything they taught you to do. You didn't stay in your hall closet, your big warm blanket of fear, hoping the part of the wind doesn't come along and kill you, right? So we've all figured out that we could do something different with our lives by going on with it. And anything we learned, they learned to lie to us. I started a radio show 3 years ago. March of last year, I started doing the daily update because I felt like the weekend show wasn't enough because there was so much new information coming out about how this is going to hurt you, how this is going to be a problem. Please pay attention. Please pay attention. Oh, the death tolls, the numbers, the click, click, click. This was like the worst telethon we've ever seen in our life, wasn't it? You weren't donating money, but you were giving your life and your soul over this fear, right? They were telling you you needed to be afraid of something, but you didn't know what it was. And they knew that. And then everything kept changing. The goalposts kept moving. So you didn't know where to go with what, right? Well, do I go outside? Do I go to the grocery store? But Walmart's still open, Home Depot's still open. But what did they close for you? The church. And they took away your hope. And they took away your dignity. They took away you getting with each other. Because when you're talking to each other, you can't be in fear. Because the more of you are together, the more you can stand. You can push back against their evils. They knew this. Stay home, be afraid, and we'll figure out how to save you in a while. Just wait. The government's here to save you. Let me ask you guys, have you guys ever been to a government building? Who in here has ever been to the DMV? Driver's license, something like that? Do you guys ever feel like you become more intellectually empowered when you walked out of there and you think it was a really great place? And I'm not saying everybody's, but come on, guys. The government's going to give you something to put in your body that's going to save you when they can't get your driver's license right, when they can't get the streets right, when they can't get the education right. Now we got purple lights on our streets. I mean, think about this, guys. Think about the information source that you're looking to. You got to look to other sources. My show, the Jim Price Show, I started it because I got ate up by the machine. I went through the sausage grinder. And I understand what it's like to be on the other side when the establishment comes for you guys. Do you guys understand that you guys are the greatest victims of the establishment, yet you don't know you're a victim? You don't know it. They ran you through the sausage grinder. They put you through the machine. And you're like, well, you know, I mostly got away. They didn't really bother me. Oh, yes, they did. You didn't go to church last year. You didn't see your grandkids. You didn't do the social things. What about football? What about baseball? Graduations all went away. But you weren't affected by the machine? Oh, maybe mine was more public, but they did to the world. And here's the thing, guys. If you read your wait. Let me ask you a question real quick. I want honesty here. How many of you have actually read the Kansas Bill of Rights, the 20-some articles, basically 20 sentences, the Kansas Bill of Rights? Please raise your hand. Shame on you. Did you know in there it says that all political powers inherent to the people, all free governments are based on their powers? Did you know that? How are you? Oh, no, they didn't teach you. Why? Why would I teach you where the key to your jail cell is underneath your pillow if I want to keep you so I can keep my jail job? My job is to control you. I'm not going to tell you where the keys to freedom are. So I'm never going to tell you that, by the way, in your Kansas Bill of Rights, which supersede the federal constitution, did you know that as well? Did you know individual state constitutions supersede the federal constitution? Did you know that? Raise a hand. Oh my God, I love a few more, 3 or 4 more. Here's the problem, guys. I'm telling you something that is literally in the phone in your pocket. That's literally stamped in paper, in parchment paper, that was written back 100 years. The Kansas Constitution was written 100 years after the federal Constitution. And yet it is more powerful than the federal. If you look at how great your rights are, according to the Kansas Constitution, you guys would not put up with any of this crap, not even for a half a second. You would be standing up, you would be making sure that your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren have the freedoms that you know they should have. You would never let it happen. How do you elect a Democrat governor from New York and a Democrat mayor from New Hampshire, and yet you tell me that this is a red state that voted for Trump? How do you get Democrat school boards? Guys, if you don't start asking real questions and you don't start opening your mouth and doing your part, it will be your fault that your children live in a society where there is no freedom, where government is there to save them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our local mayors, our state governors, we weren't paying attention. We gotta pay attention. Who's masking our kids?
The mayor, he
The
just did it 2
parents.
days ago,
The parents are, the
telling
parents
you
are.
what you could do with your churches.
That's true. But guess what? Who's ultimately masking the children? The parents and the grandparents. Okay? My kids are masking my grandkids because blind obedience. They don't want to make waves. Well, it's time to make some waves. And what are we teaching our children if they wear a mask all the time? And they don't even realize they have a mask on when they go outside and walk home or ride their bike. What are we teaching them? Shame? What else are we teaching them? Blind obedience. We're teaching them to be compliant. Okay, so
Subjugation.
we're being worked over by local elites, in my opinion. We're being worked over, and they are working at taking over the entire world, every human being. And it's gonna be easier for them to do that for the kids. So just something to keep in mind. And Cherie has a word on Medicare, so we'll switch it back a little bit to scams. I think we lost a few cats.
Okay. So I'm Cherie Fleetwood. I am with American Senior Benefits. The scams that I see with my clients and for Medicare are just, they're outrageous. When I talk to somebody and they say, I have no idea what to do. I'm getting all these phone calls. I get all this stuff in the mail. I really need help. And I set an appointment with them and I sit down. Everybody gets about 2 hours in an appointment unless you need longer because it takes time. I tell them, bring all the stuff that you have been getting in the mail, put it in a Dillon sack and bring it with you. And I go through it with them. So here's the key thing when it comes to your mail. If it's glossy and pretty and has pictures and colors, it's advertisement. If it's something you're supposed to fill out, it's a little card like this, and it's colorful. Sometimes it's pink, blue, green, and they want you to fill it out and send it back in. Nah. As soon as you do that, they're going to be calling you. It's almost like putting your phone number or email in on a computer, clicking the button, and all of a sudden your phone rings. Same situation. So government's not going to give you anything pretty. That comes in a plain envelope. Make sure you watch that it says CMS, it'll say Medicare, it'll say Social Security Administration. That's what you pay attention to. Last month, we talked just briefly about that and the commercials. Okay, so I do have numerous clients here and they probably have heard these rules from me. Here's the rules I give everybody. There were 2, but now there's 3. Number 1, stop listening to your friends. Their healthcare needs are different than yours, and they really just need to be something that fits you. I don't care if so-and-so says this is the best thing ever. Great, I'm glad they're happy with it, but that doesn't mean it's good for you. Secondly, stop watching commercials. My goodness. So like last month, if you guys were here, I said on a commercial, you know, of course, you have Joe Namath. I guarantee you he doesn't have that. There, you know, it's not true. The phone number, that big, but the writing underneath is like this. So people call that number. Don't call that number. Call somebody that knows what they're doing. You can call me, you can call anybody in my office. Just ask questions, write it down. I'd love to know the number. I'll look it up and I'll tell you exactly what it is. The third one, stop answering your phone. That's the newest one. I mean, you could already be well past 65 and your phone still rings constantly. Oh, guess what? You get your Part B of Medicare back and you're gonna get dental and you're gonna get vision and you're gonna get all this stuff. Okay, some of that is true, absolutely. Part B is based on income. You don't just get it back automatically. That's the government saying that they're gonna take care of it. That's not happening unless you apply. And the other things, yeah, you can get those, but know what you're doing. Knowledge is power. If you don't have the knowledge, go to somebody that does. Go to somebody you trust. Stay local. I'm here in Wichita. I go everywhere. I'm actually in 8 states. I take care of people's family in other states. I may not meet them face to face, but the families here trust what I'm doing. And they say, here, talk to Cherie Fleetwood. She knows what she's doing. In a second, I will do it in a second. I take care of my clients like I would expect my parents to be taken care of. Yeah. So 3 rules. Stop listening to your friends, stop watching commercials, and stop answering your phone. And I always tell my clients, put my name and number in your program in your phone. So when I call you or my assistant calls you, it pops up, you know it's us. That's all I gotta say on that so far.
Very good. But I just heard from somebody too the other day that you notice the free prescription cards that we've been getting for a while. What are some of those different ones?
Good RX.
Good RX. Who did Good RX? What did Good RX just do?
80%.
Okay, Good RX just sold us out. If they have our name, they sold the database. And do you remember who?
No, I
Who
don't.
knows the story? This is brand new. So all these free things are a way to get our information so that they can eventually cash in and sell the database, because in business, your database is your business. And so database is very, very valuable.
And that's stinky because GoodRx is really a fantastic program if it works for the medication you're taking. But for them to do that, well, that just sucks. Sorry. It's just, yes.
Okay, so I hope you guys are thinking of questions. So Kathleen Garrison, running for school board, thank you for doing that. All right, what caused you to get involved?
I've always been involved, I've always been concerned. I don't know, just innate in me, kind of a fighter. I have 8 children, most of them are adults. I have 2 left at home. I have 5 grandkids, 1 on the way. And they went through Clearwater schools. That's the school what I'm running for. And the other children, when they were younger, my older ones were in Catholic school. So one of my granddaughters is in St. Peter's now. And they don't have mass right now, praise God. But at St. Cecilia, where I go on a daily basis when I can, I noticed they were implementing it again. And so I don't have any kids there right now, full disclosure, but I still care about that parish. So I just walked into the principal's office. I didn't even know her because she's new. Introduced myself, and I was polite. I was concerned. I'm just like, well, can you please explain this to me? I don't understand why there's a difference. And there's a lot of parents in the Catholic school system in Wichita that are concerned too. This is all the conservative candidates that are running for school board in Wichita, and I'll leave it on a table out there, and you guys can take a picture of it with your phone. And that way, if you decide to go and vote, which I hope you do, you'll at least have that to reference. And you're welcome to look up these candidates. I've met some of them, and they are wonderful. But anyways, it is very confusing, and I'm not going to sit here and say that I empathize. I do empathize with you guys, because we have always been taught to trust. We've been taught to trust those in authority, those that supposedly are experts. And so I am not saying that it's understandable why a person would get confused and not know what to do. Sometimes you got to step back and think about it logically. I was thinking when I was driving today, do you remember all the commercials that you see for medication? I mean, who cannot watch a program and not see a medication commercial? What's the one thing they all have in common?
Side effects.
Side effects. And you know, at the end, you know, say how great it is, it's gonna cure, you know, acne. I don't know, whatever, that's your problem. But yet then they give you this long, long list, you know, you're like, wow, you know, you have to explain all that. We expect that, right? Why do they tell us the side effects? It's just, you know, you assume it's their legal responsibility, right? And you would want to know because, you know, newsflash, we're not all made the same. We all have different reactions to things. What's the one thing that seems to be missing in the vaccine? Have they ever told you on these commercials what the side effects are?
Or what's in it.
I mean, have they, what's it at the end of every commercial? Check with your doctor, is to see if this is right for you. Talk to your healthcare provider. Why? Because you have a unique life, you have a unique history. This is the one thing that disturbs me the most. It's fine if people are fully informed. That's what consent means. It doesn't mean you're just saying yes. Consent means you know the risks and you're willing to accept them.
Okay, very good. I'll come back to you. So we're not anti-mask or anti-vaccine, but we are anti-propaganda. And I think we have more propaganda going on today than World War Germany. And so just want you to think a little bit and not believe everything on the commercials, but also not believe everything on the news. And it's really important because there's a lot of seniors in particular that are glued to Fox News, CNN, and you name it. And we're being pitched a lot of things that might not be in our best interest. We have a scientist here today, probably a few, but Scott Pierce, you want to stand up? He was here to ask questions. Everyone's got to decide what they think, but I think sometimes it's hard to know what you think because what do you need to make a good decision? Information. So you talked about right versus left, you know, and I was kind of thinking good versus evil, but you just need information. You need good information to make a good decision. And that's something that we're kind of not allowed to get. So what's this movie?
Graduate.
The Graduate. Thank you. Boy, you're way ahead. See, we're a smart bunch.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Robinson?
Pardon?
Is that Mr. Robinson talking to Ben there?
I don't know who he is, but it's
All right, he's getting a lecture on plastics. Hey, kid, plastics.
advice was.
His advice is plastics is the wave of the future. Guess what a lot of scientists are excited about right now? What magical, miracle invention are they excited about? Guess, vaccine. What else? Graphene oxide. That's just one example. Graphene oxide. You can look on YouTube and learn about graphene oxide, and they're just so excited about graphene oxide. I think we should be a little curious about graphene oxide because it's something that conducts heat, conducts electricity. They can put it in our food. They can put it in everything. They can put it in us.
And it can be manipulated by frequency.
And they can emit it by frequency. So they weren't talking about injecting plastics, I don't think, but who knows? But I think we need to be really cautious. So I hope there's some questions. I hope we haven't scared everyone away. But you all are hearing a lot of things on the news already. So we're trying to give you a little information on the other side. Some of this information is hard to get. How can people get information that's not very easy to find?
Was that a question to me?
That's a question to you.
One of the things, guys, is that we've been talking about here, maybe I have my opinion and you have yours and your kids have theirs. But here's the thing. One thing I talked about in my beginning is this: start talking to each other. Start opening up and start getting better information. Don't look to the same old trough, wonder why the water's sour. Go to something else, look to different things. I'm not telling you to go out there and just start listening to the trees and start talking to the flowers. I'm not talking about weird stuff. I'm saying find different sources. Listen to what they have to say. And if they have something to gain by what they're telling you, that's selfishness. I think selfishness is the root of all sin. I think that's where sin begins, is when we start looking inward. When they're doing something selflessly, I get on my show every day, 5 days a week, and then on Saturdays, and I tell you about my personal experiences. I tell you about ways that you can make your life better. And I'm not asking you for the donations. I'm not asking for those things. I'm doing this because I'm putting myself out there because it's necessary. And if you look at every one of these people, they have something to gain. Every one of these commercials has something to gain. These commercials don't fix your problem. They mask the problem and then give you diarrhea. Tell me I'm wrong, right? Every one of them gives you eye bleed diarrhea. I don't know what the deal is. But the problem is, guys, is that we have to look at different avenues of information. And we wonder why we're confused, because they're keeping us confused. They move the goalpost so you can never really nail down the facts or give yourself a good path to a decision. Start looking to something other. Citizen journalists. I guess you could call me a citizen journalist if you want, because I'm not affiliated, right? I'm not AP News. I'm out there looking at things that I know that help. I take boron. Boron helps get rid of heavy metals in your body. There's things you can do with different things that you can go out there naturally, that God gave you the answer inside your body. Why do you keep looking to science? And if we want to talk to the preacher here, we're talking about the mark of the beast. Why is it that science is suddenly now our God, and we're not looking to God and each other for better answers?
Yeah.
Minerals, vitamins, sunshine.
Yeah.
Look for better answers. It's
Air.
inside of you. Yeah, air.
Air's good. Okay, so what do doctors have to gain if they don't tell you what they really think? What do they have to gain? Where's the selfish angle in that?
Every script they read.
What? Payments. They don't want to lose their license. Okay, so they'll tell you if they trust you what they think, and they have different opinions as well. But be aware that doctors are really, really, really scared. That's why we have pilots and air traffic controllers leading the war on freedom instead of physicians. Although there are a lot of physicians, there are a lot of scientists that are speaking up. They have nothing to gain, they only have something to lose, unless you're thinking about eternal salvation. They only have something to lose. They are in danger by speaking to us. And I would say listen a little bit and then decide. Because if you're being told that they're just wackos, they aren't, and you will see they aren't if you check into it. So let's get some questions.
First of all, this is to the pastor. Years ago, at a class I took, what you said complimented everything that I learned a long time ago about the word fear, which is an acronym for me. It says false expectations appearing real. And everything that you talked about just reaffirmed that acronym, that false events or false expectation, everything they tell us. If we start believing it, it becomes real and its consequences. Right. So.
Great. So he said fear, false evidence appearing real, or false expectations appearing real.
The challenge on that is today is, you go, no matter who you listen to, okay, I don't care what you listen to. In my congregation, the fellowship where I'm at, I tell them pretty much regularly, don't listen to mainline news. Number one reason why, they sell fear. That's all they sell is fear. So if they're selling fear, something's wrong. And there are news outlets out there today, many that don't sell fear. They share information and truly report. But you guys need to get out and look at it. You guys are here for a reason, because you were successful in life, that you worked hard, that you invested, you did the right things, so you got good minds. It's time to go back to using them.
Thank you. Okay, we have a couple more questions. And Mary, I think you have a comment.
Just real quick, I kind of want to add on, because this gal up here, she's totally brilliant. But yeah, I wanted to add on, because everything that she said is fabulous. There's one other thing don't do, is answer your door. We are not going to send another agent to do our job. Right. And so if they go to your door and they say, oh yeah, you're still going to be working with Sheree, she's still going to be your agent, that's not true. Always pick up the phone and call your agent and make sure. And like I said, maybe you have more to speak to that, but that is really something. And the other thing is don't be in fear that what you have for your Medicare is wrong. Just because, as she said, the person sitting next to you has a different plan. Everything is different for each person. And living in fear because you don't have exactly what somebody else thinks you should have, please go to somebody educated, and you can see it right here in the room.
Okay, so Mary, Cherie, everyone here will be here to answer questions and visits or more.
This is probably a question for the DA, but when they call me about Medicare, it's that thing that I am going to be 65 next March, so they're almost legit. But when they tell me my 2002, 2003 warranty's getting ready to run out, or the IRS after me, but I just wanted to know, I have an ear one. If I pull out my eardrum, will I get sued for that?
No.
Does that impact eternal salvation? Who else has comment or question?
It's a computer.
Because the band is gonna start, you know, they're already trying to get in on our mic. They're gonna start in here when the Saints came marching in, and we want you to stay for the party.
The only thing with this suggestion is oftentimes it's not a person on the other line, it's a recorded.
Oh, I get one, and they come back.
Oh my gosh, you are
He's an
equipped,
antagonist. I like it.
educated and empowered, thank you.
Well, the pastor told us to not fear. The radio man told us to fear everything. Now, who's right? I think my Bible says not to fear, and I make my decision with me and my Lord.
Thank you. And that's a good way to do it, because what we need is discernment. We need to pray for discernment. And we do need to stay curious, and we need to be aware there's money and power and things involved that bring about these various plots. Ultimately, we should listen. Isn't there something in the Bible about there's going to be a lot of confusion? Yes.
Especially the last days.
I want to verify what I was talking about. Wife and I was in last year, and they use key words like Homeland Security and FBI and so on. And they had you so emotional, wrapped up in fear.
That's the key.
That your common sense, our common sense went out the window. And these guys are professionals. They go to school to learn how to get into your emotions.
Absolutely.
And we even, wife and I even went to the seminar last year about scams. But we were so tied up in emotions and fear and what's going to happen when the FBI comes kicking our door.
There's a key, and that's what you missed. There's the key when that happens. What do?
Hang up.
Exactly. You hang up and you call your trusted source, whoever that trusted source is.
Yeah, but we were all hung up, you know, right then and right there.
Correct.
They're going to put you in jail.
Yeah.
Prison.
Exactly.
And I don't like prison.
No. And that's what fear does. It causes you to panic. And so Mark Bennett, who was the DA that spoke to us a couple of years ago, he said, you can also, probably should just hang up. But he said, you know what? I think I'm going to call my son. He's the district attorney. And he said we could say that. So anyway, we want to have faith over fear. We also want to be aware of what kind of world we live in. And there's wonderful things, but there's a lot of things that are trying to trip us up, and we just have to be smarter than that.
Couple things. Every one of us in here has probably received the Medicare book. How many of you have read it?
More than the Bill of Rights?
A lot of information about Medicare. The other thing I wanted to say, Pastor, what you said about fear really struck me good. But Mr. Price, you sold fear today. And I don't like that.
Yes, all right. And one thing I would say too, that sometimes a little healthy dose of awareness is very important. And people are risking their lives and their livelihoods and to provide it.
I wanted to finish for a second, because I do what I call a weekly intel briefing, 9:30 every Sunday morning at our fellowship. We go online, so you can't watch online if you want, but some people think I'm talking fear. And what I try to communicate, it's not fear, it's awareness. And that's really what he was trying to tell us today. You need to be aware of what's out there because it's real.
Yeah.
And it will bite you if you don't know what it is. And that's what I do. Here's what's going on in the world today. Here's what's going on in the Middle East, Israel. Here's what's going on even in America today. And how it actually, for us, and our goal is for that 70-week Daniel. There's something coming that's pretty great, pretty amazing. But we can't be fearful of it. We need to understand it, be aware, and engage it properly. And I really think that's what he was trying to do.
But there's different ways of saying things too.
I totally agree with you. There are different ways of saying it, but I'm just saying, I've been told more than once in the church, and that was fearful, man. I'm like, wow. But you know, to other people, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I don't know, we get prayed up when you do it.
I do want to thank people though that are sharing good information, and that good information is very difficult to find. I tried to share something on graphene oxide yesterday. Facebook doesn't let you share it, I don't think. And I don't think that very many people know what's going on in Australia today or New Zealand. Or Israel, because it's not on our blasted news. Think about Walter Cronkite. Did you ever think there'd be a day when the news people didn't report the news? That's what's happening. They're not reporting the news. They're keeping us distracted with interesting things, a lot of fear-based things, but they're not telling us really what we really should be afraid of, and that's my opinion. So if anybody's getting themselves into trouble, it's probably me. And I want to thank you for staying, and I hope you will stay and party with us. One last word from each person, then we're going to let that band get started.
Okay. So when it comes to information, I have some printouts on the table over there. I only printed a few that really pertain to you guys more than anything. It is all from District Attorney's Office. Okay, District Attorney's Office, Judicial District. This one is important consumer resources, the do not call list, if you're getting called, that kind of stuff, where you can go for your resources, okay? Yeah, they do. But if you do nothing, then, you know, if you do something that might help a little, I don't know. But it's a resource if you want to use it. Consumer alert, IRS phone scams. This is also from the DA's office. The other one, fraud, Medicare imposters. They're scaring elders into paying for coverage. So these are just some of the things that I printed so that you can grab one if you would like. All I can tell you is that when it comes to the phone, when it comes to Medicare and Social Security, they're not going to call you. Social Security will call you if they sent you a letter first and said, I'm calling you on this day at this time. Medicare's not going to call you. They just don't. Last thing is that open enrollment is starting tomorrow, October 15th through December the 7th. We have 53 days to make whatever decision it is that you need. If you need to talk to somebody, you can call me, you can call somebody in my office, you can call her, you can call anybody that you trust. Do your research and talk to the professional. Don't talk to the neighbor who says, well, that's fine, listen, but talk to somebody professionally. Tomorrow is D-Day for me, so it's about to go upside down. So if you need to get a hold of me, sometimes I'm a little hard to get a hold of. I do have an assistant, but just leave me a message or leave her one, and I promise I will get back to you.
Thank you. So that's really important. And I don't think the FBI is after you. Probably nobody in this room is the FBI after. Just keep that in mind.
They're not going to come.
No, that's true. And Jim said that you just repeat that and have a last word real quick.
Yeah, the FBI is not gonna call you before they come knock on your door, guys. It's not that- and I apologize if there's anybody out there that believes I was peddling in fear. The greatest thing I want you to understand is to be aware of the dragons, the demons, and the real evils that are in this world. And I apologize if that ever came across that way. One of the things that I actually pride myself on is talking about selflessness, talking about not being a selfish individual, about making the world a better place every single day, being better than we were the day before. The thing that we gotta think about, guys, is you guys may think that, oh, I'm on the downhill slide of things. I don't have to hold on no more. I don't have to make those decisions. But everything you've learned today is telling you that you're the greatest part. And so that what I want you guys to understand is that I have folks that are at your age that I'm taking care of. They're late stage dementia. And I'm out there putting my all into everything I'm doing for those people. And I want you to understand that this world is where Satan walks. And evil is inside of each of us. And sometimes maybe those fears we have inside of ourselves, or maybe that I exposed some of those fears you had, brought out anger, or maybe brought out an opposition to what I had to say, but maybe we need to look inside and say, where is that fear really coming from? Is it because I didn't do what I was supposed to? Is it because I didn't look to the right people for advice? Is it because I didn't engage? So guys, always take that discerning moment. Discernment is a huge, huge thing. Don't deal within the fear that they want you to deal with it, because you're gonna make horrible, horrible decisions. And I guess that's a fear moment right there, but I want you to be aware of that. If I'm not talking to you about it, who will have taught you about it? Who will have explained it to you? And maybe today you'll change something and maybe you won't, or maybe you'll double down on what you're doing. That's your choice. And that's what America's about. The land of the free, right? We talk about all political powers inherent in the people. Why are we not more empowered? Because they never told us how to. Do you realize that right now Russia has more freedom of the vaccine and mass and movement than our own country now? And those people said no, and Putin said, all right, cool. I mean, literally, guys, but that's where it's at. Why is it Florida is now accepting more shipping containers than any other ports on earth? Because DeSantis says, hey, bring it on. We'll bring on the excise taxes. We'll bring on that extra overtime. We'll put our people to work. So look at the selflessness of actions, and it can define you so much about the world around you. And if that upsets you, I apologize. It was never meant to make you fearful. I wasn't peddling in fear, but I want to make you aware that we do live in a world of sin, and it is inside all of us, and we have to be different people.
So you were talking about Russia having freedom. Did you know that a lot of Australians are trapped in their homes? They can't leave their house, and that they can maybe go outside for fresh air 1 hour a day, but they're not supposed to talk to their neighbor.
That's solitary confinement.
So we got to pick where are we at, because the whole world is looking to America, home of the free and the land of the brave. When we started our very first Empowered Senior Seminar, the very beginning, we started with the Pledge of Allegiance. We're always going to do that. And I want you to remember what is wonderful and good about our country, and wonderful and good about your neighbors, and wonderful and good about yourself. Because we want our parents and our grandparents to hang in there and be happy and not be fearful. And anyway, we love you guys. And we're gonna have to call it quit, because we have this wonderful band out here and they're ready to play for you. So please go out and enjoy the autumn weather, enjoy the music, enjoy Botanica, grab your snacks. And thank you for indulging me in sharing this information today.
I live in Irving, my husband in the clerk's class. You know anybody that is in Wichita? No, I don't have one. I can take a picture of it. Yes, yes. Wait, let me stop the recording. Yeah, sorry.
The panel for just a minute for a photo, please.